Did Brian Kelly identify the single biggest wild card on this LSU football team? We're talking about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. LSU is back on the practice field on Monday. They're back at it again on Tuesday with media availability. But in between, Brian Kelly met with reporters. Now, if you missed our Monday practice report, of course, you catch that podcast, YouTube. Just search, of course, for Locked On LSU and subscribe. We appreciate you for being there with us. But Brian Kelly met with reporters and covered a lot of ground. He talked about Harold Perkins, Bernard Gooden, a couple of defensive players that are having great camps so far. Gave an injury update on Aaron Anderson, which you'll hear in just a smidge as well. But the single most impactful thing I heard Brian Kelly talk about on Monday after practice was when he was asked about JUAN Johnson. Now, I want to give you some context. If you're an everydayer, you heard us talk about JUAN Johnson plenty. But I also understand that there's a lot of people, especially as we ramp up toward football season, there's a lot of people that'll find the show that maybe aren't familiar. JUAN Johnson, if you are a Louisiana high school football fan, is a name you undoubtedly know. So JUAN Johnson, and just give you a little bit of context here. JUAN Johnson went to LCA, Lafayette Christian Academy. And when he finished his high school football career, he set Louisiana high school football records for total yards and touchdowns. He was incredible. More than 14,000 yards and 171 touchdowns. That dude crossed the goal line 171 times in 4 years in high school. That's over 40 touchdowns a year. That's insane. Basically, JUAN Johnson knows what to do with the ball in his hands, period, full stop. So he comes to LSU, and they're working him out as a defensive back. Okay. John Emery tears his ACL the week after the opener against USC last season, so going into the Nichols game. So now all of a sudden, Trey Holly still doesn't have his legal situation cleared. John Emery has torn his ACL. So LSU's down to Caden Durham, Caleb Jackson. That's basically it. They got to have options at running back. So they take JUAN Johnson and say, hey, look, we appreciate you playing defensive back, but we need options at running back. You good to maybe jump over there? He does. You know what JUAN Johnson did in his first game? Literally his first game, like ever playing running back in college? LSU plays Nichols. He catches 3 passes for 16 yards and a touchdown. I mean, there are players that still have not scored a touchdown in their collegiate career. And game 1, boom, there you go. Guy knows what to do with the ball in his hands. So a lot of people were surprised when in spring Brian Kelly announced, after A.J. Swan and Ricky Collins had transferred, and of course they brought in Michael Van Buren, that JUAN Johnson was going to be a quarterback. So JUAN Johnson spends the spring playing quarterback. And he's going to be a quarterback. Now, we all know he's not going to play quarterback this year. You've got Garrett Nussmeier, you brought in Michael Van Buren, you got Colin Hurley as well. So JUAN Johnson is your 4th scholarship quarterback, really. And the 4th scholarship quarterback isn't going to impact the game at quarterback. But if you remember in the spring game, the spring scrimmage, they ran a goal line series, and they ran a play where Garrett Nussmeier was in and JUAN Johnson was offset next to him, and Nuss sort of motioned out to the left. They direct snapped to JUAN Johnson, boom, touchdown. And you could say, there's the light bulb. They're going to find creative ways to get JUAN Johnson involved. And so far through fall camp, and they've got 5 practices in the books at the time we're recording this, all the quarterbacks are in red, no contact jerseys, except number 8, except JUAN Johnson. Because we have seen JUAN Johnson line up as a Wildcat quarterback. We have seen JUAN Johnson line up offset next to Garrett Nussmeier and take handoffs as a running back. We have seen them throw the ball to JUAN Johnson out of the backfield. The point is, he may be a quarterback on the roster. They're using him in a lot of different ways. So the question begs, what exactly are you doing with JUAN Johnson? What is the plan? And Brian Kelly answered that on Monday.
Well, he's given everything we've asked him, probably more. He's a special kid. He'll do anything. We got him working at quarterback right now, wide receiver, running back. I think when it comes to making a decision on JUAN, it's, how far do we go this year with him? Because we didn't redshirt him last year. And I want to make sure that his time is valuable and impactful. So whatever happens with JUAN, he's going to play 4 games. The question is whether he plays 5. And that will be dictated as he performs and as the offense kind of works around him. But we love him and what he's doing for our program.
He's going to play 4. Will he play 5? And that's determined by how the offense is impacted around him. What a fascinating answer, because you may hear that. You may hear that and go, okay, well, they're going to play him against Louisiana Tech and Southeastern and maybe Vanderbilt and Western Kentucky, and those will be the 4. And oh, by the way, he can play in the bowl game as well. Remember, that's what West Weeks did a year ago. When West Weeks got injured, it was very clear that he was going to have the opportunity to return. Now, they could have used him late in the season, but instead they started playing true freshman Devon Keys more, so that way they could preserve West Weeks' red shirt. Now he ended up coming back and playing against Oklahoma, his 4th game, and playing in the bowl game, because the bowl game doesn't count against your eligibility anymore. So they could do something similar, but here's the real question about JUAN Johnson. This is like the legitimate, I need to know the value here. Is their idea, let's play him against Tech and Southeastern and maybe Vanderbilt and Western Kentucky, or are they going, oh, no, we're going to play him against Clemson and against Texas A&M and against Bama and at Oklahoma? Because that could be the wild card in those 4 games, that which might be close games, some on the road. We get this added dimension they're not ready for, because they're going to see plenty of film on Caden Durham and Caleb Jackson and Aaron Anderson and Nick Anderson and Chris Hilton and Trey'Dez Green. What they ain't going to see is 8. They don't know what LSU's doing with 8 when he goes in the ballgame. That is going to be a fascinating test case for what they do, because it could come to pass that JUAN Johnson, let's say hypothetically, becomes a real red zone threat for you against Clemson. And you look forward and go, okay, this is a package where when 8's on the field in the red zone, the odds of LSU scoring a touchdown increase 35%. I don't know the number, but they'll do the math and all that stuff. Then you start to ask the question, can you actually afford not to play him in these SEC games when he might be able to affect you and score the ball or affect scoring plays in these SEC games? And then you have to play him. That is going to be a fascinating test case to find out. And I don't have the answer today. What I do know is this. They would like to redshirt him clearly if they could. But JUAN Johnson may be such a factor in the red zone that they have to play him. Now, with an offense like LSU has, that has just an embarrassment of riches in the skill positions, they may not need JUAN Johnson. So maybe they could still use him in those spots. Clemson, at Ole Miss, at Bama, at Oklahoma. Maybe they could use him in those spots and still maintain that red shirt. Or maybe they can't help but continue to use him in every game possible. That's going to be fascinating, because you could be looking at a guy who's competing in 2026 could be competing to be your starting quarterback, or 2027, or who knows. But it's all going to be based on what Brian Kelly just said there. When he gets on the field, how much does he affect the game, and in what ways? That we'll only find out when you get into game week against Clemson and beyond. But make a little note next to that and watch how they continue to use number 8, JUAN Johnson, a guy who knows what to do when the football is in his hands. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, it can with Monarch Money. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. So maybe it's one of those things where you've got a financial goal. You want to buy a home. Maybe you're trying to pay off your vehicle. Maybe you want to get out of debt, or maybe you're trying to look into some type of investment property. Monarch Money can help you get there. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. There are two defensive players that Brian Kelly highlighted in his media availability on Monday, and both have taken very different paths to where they are right now at LSU, but both could have similarly impactful seasons. The first is a guy who is a name you need to get to know. In all of these practice reports that we've talked about so far through fall camp, I've mentioned the name Bernard Gooden. He's wearing number 88. He's the defensive tackle transfer from South Florida, and he is not big. I've got the roster right here, and they have him listed, Bernard Gooden, number 88, at 6'1", 268 pounds. So you were talking about a guy that is diminutive in stature. He is not a giant space-eating defensive tackle, but man, has he been impactful. The first day we got to go watch them outside, he got 2 tackles for loss on consecutive plays, a sack and a TFL, working against Josh Thompson, who's at right guard. When we have seen LSU go to this speed rush package where they've had Kalaj Cobbins and Gabe Relaford at ends and Jack Pyburn and Bernard Gooden at tackle, Gooden's been on the field as well. He's a guy who consistently is making plays on the interior of the defensive line, a prototype of what Kyle Williams wants. And Brian Kelly gave an update when asked about Bernard Gooden on Monday.
He's really flashed. He's doing a lot of good things. He brings a high motor, right? He's a guy that brings energy to the group, intensity to the group. I bring up that word again that was mentioned. So I think that's bringing up everybody in terms of the competition level. His abilities fit the defensive structure that Blake likes to run. We're aggressive, move in the front, and he just has a great sense in terms of getting off blocks. And sometimes that's a hard trait to teach. You just can or you can't, and he's very difficult to block.
That is an undeniable truth. LSU fans need to get used to seeing that jersey. You need to know 88 because he is going to factor in. And when we were watching practice on Monday, it's so interesting because when the first team defense is out there, it is a very liberal rotation. Like every second play, you're seeing a new wave of players go in. So it may be Relaford and Pyburn for the first couple of snaps, and then Butler and Payton are at ends on the next snaps, and at corner it may be Mansour Delane and Ashton Stamps, then it's Jakeem Jackson and DJ Pickett or PJ Woodland, and it's a very free and liberal rotation. All that to say, they are going to use 20 to 22 guys consistently on the defensive side of the ball. Don't be surprised at all when you see that many guys rotating defensively, because there's just very little drop-off at a lot of spots, and so they can constantly keep fresh bodies out there. But Bernard Gooden is going to play a lot, and he is going to be a very impactful interior player, especially with his ability to create havoc, which is what Blake Baker relies on. You may not have a defense that's top 5 in total defense as far as yards allowed, but when you're creating havoc rate, right? Forced fumbles, TFLs, sacks, those types of pressures, that's what Blake Baker thrives on, and that is what Bernard Gooden is very good at. And another person who's very good at that is Harold Perkins, who had a monster day at Monday's practice. If you didn't catch the practice report, please go back and check it. But 3 plays in particular in the team periods. During 7-on-7, Harold Perkins had an interception of Garrett Nussmeier. He also, in 11-on-11, came on a blitz and forced Nussmeier to hurry a ball and just fired into the ground to avoid a sack. And then he also had a TFL on a screen pass. They ran a tight end screen to Bauer Sharp. Perkins read it beautifully, shed his block, made the tackle behind the line of scrimmage against Bauer Sharp. Harold Perkins looks every bit the superstar he was at the beginning of his career and is absolutely healthy, and Brian Kelly sees the potential there.
Yeah, I think it's a familiar role for him, one that now he has a complete knowledge of the linebacker position. He's not just a guy out there running around making plays. He's so much more intentional. He knows the game. He knows the nuances of it. The pick that he got in 7-on-7, he baited Nussmeier into it. Just those little things, right, are experiential kind of plays that he's making. But no, I think physically he's been great. Taking care of himself. Recovery day, he's a beast. He just knows that, as I said, this is his year, and all of those things have allowed him to be really, really focused and not distracted by anything.
This has to be music to LSU fans' ears. And I know we have all questioned and wondered when we were going to see the Harold Perkins we saw as a freshman realize his potential, his physical ability. He is showing it off every day right now, because if there are 2 guys defensively who that offense has not been able to deal with, it's Bernard Gooden and Harold Perkins. If you're looking for 2 guys that are creating havoc, 88 and 7 are the 2 worth keeping an eye on. It is fair if you are sitting there going, I'll believe it when I see it with Perkins. I got to see a full 12 games. I get it. And it has been a long, winding road with injuries and position changes and all the stuff. I get it. But what you also know to be true, because you've seen it with your own 2 eyes, is that Harold Perkins, when he is healthy and he is right, he is a handful. I mean, he is the guy that as a true freshman was spying Heisman winner Bryce Young. He's the guy who wrecked the game against Arkansas. He's the guy as a sophomore who changed the game at Missouri when he had that interception before the end of the first half when LSU couldn't get a stop. And then that play changed the game before the half. The point being, a healthy Harold Perkins, who is in the right position, is a menace for opposing offenses, and he's showing it off right now, which is amazing to see. A couple of other things that I want to get to before we get out of here for the day. Brian Kelly did give an update on Aaron Anderson and the offensive line battle. We'll get to that as we continue to wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor to your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need the extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Listen, I love 5-Hour Energy. I've taken it for years before my 3-hour radio show. It gives me incredible focus and energy to get through a 3-hour mental grind like that. So if you're on the golf course or wherever you may be throughout your day, you'll love to have a couple of 5-Hour Energies in your bag, especially if you're on the course in your golf bag, because golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code here, Locked On Golf, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September the 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Brian Kelly, before we get the injury update on Aaron Anderson, talk a little O-line, Brian Kelly did lay out the plan for the rest of the week, because to this point, LSU has not been in full pads, but that changes on Tuesday.
We tackle tomorrow. So our 6th practice, they allow you to tackle by NCAA rules. then you have to be a percentage of all your practices have to meet a criteria. So our Saturdays will be pretty much, our night Saturdays will be pretty much scrimmages. So you can count on those days for the most part as scrimmages. Again, tomorrow, and then we go on Wednesday, which will be, a 2-hour practice. It'll be the first time we get 2 hours of exposure. And, that will be much more situational work. So tomorrow, big day for them. Wednesday, a lot of situational work. Thursday, they have a recovery day. And then we go Friday leading into a scrimmage on Saturday. That's kind of the week right now.
So for what it's worth, the media does have access we had access Monday. We are allowed to watch Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday's a recovery day, no access Friday, and then we do have access to the scrimmage on Saturday. So just as you kind of pace out your week and what you can expect to see with some of our reports coming out of LSU fall camp. And one of the things that we've been watching most closely, of course, is the offensive line battle. Now, as we knew from day one, and Brian Kelly made it known that Braylon Moore had sort of entrenched himself there at center. That continues. But Brian Kelly also gave a little more clarity to the offensive line shuffle so far.
Paul, DJ, Colin Eccles, and who am I missing? Thompson. Yeah, Thompson. So those 4 guys, 1A, 1B right now. They're just rolling in and out as we've kind of established Braylon Moore as the center. And so those 4 guys are working, and DJ would be our number 2 center. So it's a 4-man rotation right now with those guys. Okay.
So we knew it after the first practice because he told us in so many words. And now in this press conference, Brian Kelly acknowledged Braylon Moore is a starting center. Like that, he's entrenched. They're not moving him out of there. And that's no surprise. Again, it was DJ Chester at center last year was your weakest link at arguably the most important position on the offensive line. And it's not to say Chester's a bad player. He started 13 games at that spot. He was just your weakest player because he was playing out of position. They took their 5 best and find a way to get the 5 best on the field. Well, Chester was one of the 5 best. He was just playing out of position. Well, now you went into the portal and you got to address center. So they went and got Braylon Moore, a 2-year starter at Virginia Tech, a Power 4 school in the ACC, the best center in the portal, and brought him to Baton Rouge. Of course, he was going to be your starting center in the same way as we've talked about that when they went and got Jaden Daniels out of the portal in 2022, he was going to be the starting quarterback. They knew what they had coming back in Miles Brennan. You had Walker Howard there. You had a young Garrett Nussmeier. They went and got a guy that was a 3-year starter at Arizona State. Of course, he was going to be the starter. Of course, even with all the shuffles and rotations in spring, Braylon Moore was going to be the starter. So Braylon Moore is the starter. But the interesting thing what Brian Kelly said there was about the rotation at guard. Effectively saying, without saying, the tackle spots are locked down. Tyree Adams at left, Weston Davis at right. So as of right now, 3 of your 5 offensive line spots are locked down. Now, I still believe that the way they lined up day one is how they're going to line up against Clemson. And I've said this for, if you're an everydayer, you've heard me say it. I've said it since the spring. And since they brought in Josh Thompson and Braylon Moore. Left to right, it's going to be Tyree Adams, DJ Chester, Braylon Moore at center, Josh Thompson at right guard, and Weston Davis at right tackle. And Brian Kelly acknowledging, yes, Braylon Moore is your center. Well, he talked about the rotations at guard, didn't say anything about tackle because tackle's set. Tyree Adams is going to be the left tackle, and Weston Davis is going to be the right tackle. And the only thing that could change that is if either guy is an absolute disaster in a game, which you hope isn't the case. And I'll remind you, Tyree Adams played the bowl game at left tackle. Now, Miles Frazier kicked out and played right tackle in the bowl game against Baylor, but Weston Davis has had a really good camp so far. So I think 3 of those 5 spots are set, and I do think against Clemson, you're going to see DJ Chester at left guard and Josh Thompson at right guard because those are 2 guys that have played. You're not going to run Paul Mabengo. Well, Mabengo started 5 games, but Chester started 13, and Josh Thompson is a multi-year starter in the Big Ten. If you're opening up against Grambling at home, maybe it's a different situation, but you're opening up on the road at Clemson, you are going to want to have guys that have been through those fires before, and Chester started 13 games. He started on the road in the SEC, and Josh Thompson's a multi-year starter in the Big Ten. Yes, those are going to be the guys who you trust to go on that road, in that road environment, against Clemson and try to maintain composure, crowd, all that stuff, and play really well. So they'll continue to battle, and I'm very optimistic, especially about a guy like Cohen Eccles. I mean, I think Cohen Eccles ultimately is going to be your starting center next season in 2026, taking over for Braylon Moore when he goes off to the NFL. But a lot is still to be determined, but that shuffle is happening at guard. Now, I told you we'd get you an update on Aaron Anderson. Here's what Brian Kelly said after Monday's practice.
Yeah, I think today he felt really good. We're going to be very careful with him. This is the results of, he was great this summer in his training, never missed a day. Probably a little bit of too much work in that sense, where he had some inflammation in the knee. We took an MRI, a bone scan. Everything looks really good. Now it's about just getting him back moving. So he'll do some agility and some movement tomorrow with the hope that Wednesday we've got him back out on the field.
Aaron Anderson in his career has played in 25 games with 11 starts. He has had some massive moments in his career. Most notably, of course, was the game-tying touchdown reception against Ole Miss late in the fourth quarter in that game, that overtime upset game last year. Kyron Lacey had the game winner, but it was Aaron Anderson's fourth down touchdown reception down the seam, which sent that game to overtime. I don't worry at all about Aaron Anderson's ability to be ready to go when LSU plays Clemson. He's just got to be physically ready to go. The great news there from BK is the MRI, the bone scan, all looks good. It's just about getting him rested and ready to go. And you've got just under 4 weeks to make that happen. Just make sure Aaron Anderson's ready to go when LSU takes on Clemson in South Carolina on August the 30th. And we'll be here every step of the way. That'll do it for us today's episode of Locked on LSU. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now, for your second listen, go check out The Portal Show on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can listen to us on podcasts. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.